Hello everyone, my name's Josh Diaz, and today we're going to talk about a rumor that's circulating in the camera industry, and that's the rumor that Sony is going to be releasing a 24-70 f2 zoom lens this year. That's right, a 24-70 f2. This rumor has been shared by multiple creatives across the internet, though no big outlets have picked it up yet. I do just want to make a video speculating and theorizing how this lens could look if it was introduced and how it would change the lens landscape, particularly for Sony shooters. As a Sony shooter myself, it has been an interesting time being in the E-mount, seeing Canon and their RF mount innovate in a bunch of different ways with their new zoom lenses at different apertures. I feel like as an E-mount shooter, we are missing out a little bit. But the rumor is that a 24-70 f2 lens from Sony will be released by the end of the year, and it will be the fastest full-frame native zoom lens that Sony produces as a first party. This is a really interesting rumor because for the longest time it's been theorized that with the limitations of the E-mount being now one of the oldest mirrorless system mounts and the smallest, that Sony's going to have some difficulty creating lenses, primes, and zooms with faster than typical apertures just because of the constraints around that mount. Now, I'm not an engineer or a physicist or a lens designer, I don't know what's possible, but I would really like to see an f2 zoom lens natively from Sony. And it's hard to argue that there wouldn't be a market for it. I mean, Canon came out with their 28-70 f2 just a few years ago, and that lens was incredible. The Canon 28-70 f2 came out in 2020, just 4 millimeters shorter than the 24-70 typical zoom range, and that lens was an absolute spectacle. Some of the creative outlets didn't really know how to process it, saying that, it was heavy and it was bulbous and it was hard to use, and others just absolutely praised it for its fast and extra utilitarian design that would essentially help you replace primes in an event shooter bag or something, quick that you needed that zoom range for. And personally, I thought it was a really interesting lens, and I thought Sony would be much quicker to jump on the ball of the f2 zoom train that we've all been witnessing. And that's to say nothing of the extended focal length lenses that have been coming out from Canon and from third parties. Not too long ago, Canon released the 24-105 f2.8 to critical acclaim, for video shooters at least, giving them a little extra reach on that typical f2.8 zoom, although for the trade-off of a lot of extra weight and size. And there's rumors that there's a new Sigma on the way that could cut the weight down substantially for a 24-105 f2.8 mirrorless lens. So there's a lot of interesting lenses coming out in different speeds and different focal lengths that could make this a practical solution for Sony to release an f2 24-70. And that is to say nothing of Sigma's newest darling, a lens they released just a few months ago, the Sigma 28-45 f1.8 full-frame zoom lens. That was previously an aperture, a speed that we didn't really think that you could get to on full-frame zooms, but Sigma made it happen. It is kind of a niche range, but it's perfectly usable for shooters within that 28-45, even up to 50 range. And it's unfortunate that a lot of these lenses have been for RF exclusive. I mean, the Sigma, the 28-45 is not exclusive to RF, but the previous two, the 24-105 and the 28-70 f2, are RF exclusive because they're Canon first party. And I have to say, as a Sony shooter, I feel like I'm getting a little taste of my own medicine, honestly. It seemed like not too long ago, all of the mirrorless lenses that were coming out were for E-mount, and RF was the one that was being shortchanged. But now it seems like the interesting zooms are all going to RF, and I do believe Sony needs to step up, or at least a third party, Sigma or Tamron, and make some more interesting glass in the zoom category for these cameras. And so far, Sigma, and you know what? Tamron also has a lot of really interesting zooms. So Sony as a first party, I think, could really innovate with a 24-70 f2 if it is possible. I think it would be a really interesting launch given that their GM line right now, their GM line is as strong as it's ever been. Recently, we had updates to every single GM lens, the 16-35, the 24-70, and the 70-200. The latter two I personally own and are the best iterations of those lenses. And I don't really know where this lens would fit in. I mean, the 24-70 Gmaster lens, the f2.8 version, is excellent in its current state. It's fast, it's incredibly light, something that would undoubtedly be a sacrifice for a faster lens. And it's relatively well priced. I will say the new Sigma 24-70 kind of blew it out of the water with its pricing, but it's relatively well priced when compared to Canon and Nikon offerings in the same class. So if Sony releases a 24-70 f2, I'm left wondering where it's going to lie in the field of these lenses. Canon's 28-70 f2 was a bit more cut and dry for me because it didn't necessarily replace the 24-70 f2.8 from Canon. The f2 was substantially bigger, substantially heavier, and cut down 4 millimeters on the wide end, making it a little more of a niche choice, especially given the price being much, much more expensive. So it was very purposeful, the people who went out and bought that lens. And the rumors that are coming down the pipe about this 24-70 f2 from Sony is that it could potentially be much lighter or lighter than the Canon equivalent, making it more in comparison with, older Gmasters or, traditional 24-70s. So if you have a lens that has the exact same focal length of 24-70 and is relatively comparable in terms of weight, the only difference being the price and the speed, it stands to reason that there might be a bit of cannibalization out of that 24-70 Gmaster f2.8 crowd, the people who are going to buy that lens and then go to this other lens. I know that we kind of joke about E-mount being really saturated with different lens options and some of like the obvious choices, which means that others just don't sell as well. But this could be a case where Sony would need to differentiate that lens so that it doesn't take people out of buying the traditional Gmaster lenses, which are already very, very good lenses. I can see why brands want to start with the 24-70 as a kind of breakthrough point to get down to f2 from f2.8, because it's that do-everything utilitarian lens. It's if you were going to buy one zoom, you probably would buy that one, so why not iterate and innovate on that one lens first, just to make it as applicable to as many people as possible. But this does kind of put in the question, and Canon's already facing this right now, is that in the future, will we have a holy trinity of f2 glass? Is that on the horizon? I'm not entirely convinced that we will have a 16-35, 24-70, and 7200 f2. I can only imagine there's incredible technical limitations for those products to be developed. At this point, I'm more on the side of in-camera and in-editor technologies helping to bring out the f-stop with perhaps some sort of AI tool or built-in tools in Lightroom or Premiere Pro or whatever product you're using, bringing down the f-stop technically. We're already seeing that with different blur options in Lightroom and subject separation in DaVinci Resolve. So I'm not even 100% sure how much of a priority this is for these camera brands to keep pushing down the aperture or speeding it up to gain market share. I mean, it's an incredible marketing point if you have the fastest first-party zoom lens, I will say, even if it's bulbous and it costs $4,000. But it's an incredible marketing point, and Sony's been behind. Canon has had an f2 zoom for 3+ years, and I wouldn't be surprised if Sony's feeling the pressure because of that. And that kind of leads me to, well, do we need this? And the answer is no. We don't need any of this. We are fine with what we have, personally, I think. But does that mean I'm not excited to see an f2 zoom lens from Sony? Of course not. No, I would be incredibly excited to see a first-party zoom lens. Even some of the newer zooms from Sony have excited me, like the 12-24. I know it's not even in the same ballpark of the 24-70 focal length, but just to see a fast zoom lens in that range, in that style, was really impressive to me. And the things that the third parties are doing with Sigma's f1.8 is just incredible, absolutely pushing the boundaries of what defines a zoom lens, which used to be, those technical limitations of speed as a compromise for the changing of the focal length. And now we are driving that down. And I think that's great for photographers and videographers and video creators, as long as it doesn't, completely bleed us dry from our wallets. I think that's good. And that segues into the price. And, oh boy, I can only assume that if Sony is releasing a 24-70 f2 zoom lens, that it is going to be expensive. Very, very, very expensive. First-party lenses, especially, the L series, the Nikors, the Gmasters, they are as expensive as they've ever been. Now, they're better than they've ever been, so you can argue that we're getting a better value, but when a lens starts to creep into, and I'm just going to speak in Canadian really quickly, $4,000 Canadian, I start to grimace, and things are getting pretty dicey, because that is a lot of money for a lens. And the 70-200 f2.8 got into that range almost. In Canada, it's like $3,500 plus tax, gets to like $3,850 kind of thing. I can only imagine that a 24-70 f2 would be very similar, if not more expensive. So then the next question would be, who would that be for? Who would a 24-70 f2 zoom lens be for? And I have to say, it'd be great for event videographers. It would be great for wedding videographers. It would be great for those shooters, and you probably know who you are, who only carry a 35 and an 85 prime, because this would be it, right? Like if you're carrying 1.8 primes in 35 and 85, why not consolidate? Why not go down to a 24-70 f2? I think it'd be a great decision as long as it fits your workflow and it's not exceedingly heavy. Other than that, I wouldn't expect it to be the prime killer that outlets may tout a lens like that as, because it just, it isn't as fast as a 1.4 yet. It's not even as fast as a 1.8, and I know it's really close, but a prime exists because it's simple, it's a straightforward choice, and it's light and it's easy to use, at least a lot of the time. That is what a prime lens is. And this would be a completely different shooting experience, I can imagine, given what rumors I've heard online. A great shooting experience, I imagine, a lot of versatility and a lot of different options, but you just have to kind of balance what your workflow is and whether or not a lens like that would be right for you. So that is my quick take on the rumors about the upcoming Sony 24-70 f2 zoom lens. Is this a lens you would consider purchasing, given all of the changes we've seen in mirrorless zoom lenses over the last few years and, seeing what Canon did with their f2 zoom lens? Is this something you would consider? Would you sell lenses to buy this lens? Let me know in the comments down below. I appreciate you very much. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.